All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to log in and watch this video on uh, the review for exam one. So, what I've done is I put together a review guide that I'm going to pull up and share with you guys here in a moment. I have also got the formula sheet that will be available to you during your exam. So, we're going to talk about uh, some of the background components of the exam, like the basics, not background, but the basics, like what it's going to look like, all of those things. And then we'll run through the review. I'm not going to spend a ton of time because you're going to have the study guide, but yeah, and then all this will be posted out in eCampus, and your exam will go live at 10 a.m. on Monday, February 16th. And it will run through Friday night at 11:59 p.m. So let's go ahead and get started. And so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I need to move the video to my other screen. Share. And let's share screen one. All right, there we go. Okay. So here is sort of the test format. There's going to be, if you remember from the syllabus, 75 points total for the exam. The way I've gotten us to that place is through 15 multiple choice questions. They're worth 2 points each, and they're spread evenly between the three primary chapters that we cover. So chapters 2, 4, and 5. So questions for each chapter. And then there are going to be 9 problem-solving questions worth 5 points each. Like I said, chapters 2, 4, and 5. The 9 problem-solving questions are going to be the ones that you can submit corrections for. There will be no makeup, no corrections for submitting correct answers for the multiple choice questions. They're not really what we're focusing on with that task. With that, we're really just focused on the ones that you're having to actually do some sort of work to get there, and that you can show me on paper. So, okay. So that's the basic format. Let's see what other things I should add to some of this other stuff. Let me pull up the policies on the exam here on my other schedule. All right, and I'll put these in here. I didn't have them in here before. So starts 10 a.m. February 16 to 11:59 p.m. February 20th. Yeah, 20th. That's Friday night. Um, remember, these are due by. Let's add the word by in there so that that's clear. Due by 11:59, which means if you open it at 11:58, 1 minute into your exam, it's going to automatically submit it, and chances are you're either going to have a 0 or maybe 2 points if you were able to guess the first multiple choice question. It has to be completed before then. Because the answer keys and everything are going to be, or not the answer keys, but the right and wrong, all that is going to be submitted or available for you to see after the exam, like um, Saturday morning. There's not going to be any late exams. If you miss it for some reason, there is the policy in the syllabus that you will be able to get some credit for the exam based on the final exam of the course. So there won't be any makeups. You have 5 days basically to take it, so that should be plenty of time to get it done. So okay, let's see what else. So I've made the exam. I know our class is 50 minutes long. I've made the exam 60 minutes, just it's a bonus 10 minutes. I don't think it's going to take you 60 minutes. Um, but if it does, like it's there. The extra 10 minutes is available. So 60 minutes to complete. Let's see. Let me one attempt. Yeah, Saturday morning, you'll be able to see your question scores, correct or incorrect indicators, and your total score, but it won't tell you how to do them. And the purpose of that is so that you can do the correction signs. Um, the, all right, now let's look at the proctoring components. So we're going to use Proctorio, which is the Brawl Bill partner for proctoring. It if you go to the syllabus, here we put check syllabus for install. Yeah. So if you haven't added Proctorio to your computer yet, you'll need to do that. It is an extension you have to Google Chrome. It runs best on Chrome. It also runs on a couple of the other browsers. My knowledge, it does not run on Safari. I don't know if anyone uses Safari or not, but my understanding is that it does not work or doesn't work well. Um, so not being able to get Proctorio to work won't be an excuse for not having the exam done on time. You need to install Proctorio, and there are, um, I know on the installation page, I think there's a way that you can pull it up and make sure it's running. Um, if it's something is not working, you'll need to contact Proctorio's um, support directly. And that's why if you wait until again 8 or 9 o'clock on Friday night, try to install the extension. It doesn't work. You have no one to get a hold of. You're trying to, email me or your classmates, and no one's getting back to you in time. And then you finally get it to work at 11:30, 11:45 or something, then you're going to run out of time. So that's not going to be a good enough exam or a good enough reason to not have the exam done on time. So do Proctorio early, even if you're not taking the exam, go make sure it's working. I've had very few students that had any kind of problems with it, and they were always able to get it worked out. So you should be able to get that done. Now, as far as what Proctorio is going to do, let me pull that up so I can tell you what else settings are turned on. Let's see. All right, there's a new setting that I'm able to add, and it will take you guys back to your Respondus lockdown browser days. I'm actually able to add the video content to Proctorio now, which means that you will need to have your video camera on. Now, I am not requiring you to show your desk, show your ID, go around the room and interview anybody within 100 square miles of you. Like, I'm not doing all that stuff that we went kind of crazy with in the accounting principles classes with the Respondus. But the video will be on, and I do expect your camera to be open while you're taking the exam. And if your camera is not on during the exam, then there will be some kind of a points penalty for that because, I mean, that's what it's there for. So one, need the video. Then the other options, it's going to, if you have multiple displays, it only lets you use one display at a time, but I do have it set up that you can open other programs, which is how you'll be able to like open up the attached formula sheet. It'll let you open that up because it opens it. It's a PDF. Um, it's not going to let you copy and paste, print, right click, uh, do any of those things. Um, and it's also going to theoretically it's going to disable most of your other browser extensions. So if you have other extensions on your browser that operate in the background and do something, it basically overrides those for the time period that you're in the exam. Um, and then at the end, you will be asked to sign an integrity statement, basically saying, "Hey, I didn't cheat on this." Um, and I mean, I expect you not to. So, but we are going to sign that because that way that we're all being held accountable for the highest standards uh, in the exam environment. I do have the basic calculator turned on. It's not really useful. Now there's some stuff where like you need to multiply something together or whatever. You could use that instead of using your financial calculator. But otherwise, it's not a whole lot of good for you. I cannot. I tried to get it to allow me to add the website that has the finance calculator on it. I cannot get it to do that. And I didn't think I would be able to, but I can't. And so that is not an option. You'll need a physical calculator to do the exam. If you try to do the exam without a calculator by doing like hand calculations with a regular calculator, it can be done. You might have rounding issues. So let me put that on here. Rounding issues for manual calculations. You missed a question by a very, very small rounding difference. Please alert me. I will review it and give back the points if I can verify it is just rounding. McGraw gives you a little bit of leeway with the rounding, but it's not a whole lot. And so if you're trying to do something by hand, like with a regular calculator, it might be outside of whatever that scope is, that predetermined like limit. And so if that happens, I can't go through and check every wrong question that everybody puts in to see if like they were only off by like 0.04% or whatever. I don't know exactly what the threshold is, but I not physically able to go through and check all those. So you'll have to bring that to my attention. For those types of questions, there's no point in like I don't want you to have to do a corrections file for it. You should get the points for that if you've done it all correct. It also means you spend a lot more time doing it because it takes a lot longer to do it with a regular calculator than with a finance calculator. So anyway, so those are that's the other item that I want to make sure that you're aware of. All right, so let me get out of the settings over here on the assignment so that I can get back out of that. I want to make sure I save everything. All right, so now let's go ahead. Now that we've gone through sort of the format of everything, let's go ahead and take a few minutes and run through the chapters. You're going to have this file, so I'm not going to belabor the individual points, but I do want to go through and show you, what I've put on here. For chapter 2, the financial statements, taxes, and cash flow, I'll tell you I focus primarily on the financial statements and taxes with very little bit on the cash flow, and that's going to be the taxes and cash flow are going to be multiple choice questions only. And so you may or may not get a question because there's, I've got a big pool. I actually went through all the questions and picked out the questions that I wanted to use for the multiple choice. So, that's the only place you're going to see those. Just some basic points. Understanding the accounting equation and how you got to keep it equal. That's assets is liabilities plus shareholders' equity. If one side goes up, the other side must also, or liabilities and shareholders' equity one can go up and the other can go down. but that equal sign always has to be right. Um, you should know what liquidity means, basically how quickly you can turn something into cash without, the fire sale component of it. If you were to regular sell it at market value or whatever, how quickly could you turn it into cash? To those end, just knowing what the difference between book value and market value is. Book value being the accounting value versus market value is what you could sell it for. And then knowing the cash flows to shareholders can be negative to the company because if they're paying that dividends out, that drops cash down. Or cash flows to shareholders can be positive if you're issuing new shares and selling it, then you've got cash coming in. So again, pretty basic concepts. Um, Nothing, the taxes, let's see, add one bullet point here. Taxes, no total tax on what's the word? Where the taxes go up like a little bit, like the first $1,000 is taxed at this, the second $1,000, like the regular tax brackets. So know how to calculate total tax using tax brackets, which will be given to you if you had a question that asked you to solve something like that. It would give it to you uh, what the different tax brackets were, and then knowing how to calculate um, the average tax rate, um, which the average tax rate, like if you're given net income, you're given, uh, or if you're given the taxable income and you're given tax amount, you can, do the backwards math and figure out what the tax rate's given. So average tax rate equals the rate shown on the income statement. So you want to be able to calculate that. I know that I saw that showing up in some questions. So that's something that's worth looking at. I'm going to put on here just for your guys' reference, the very basic balance sheet and income statement, just so you can look down through it. Now, I didn't break these out like current assets. I didn't put in here that it's accounts receivable and inventory, the fixed long-term assets is your property, plant, and equipment. Like I didn't put all the little sub pieces in it. You'll need to know those. But this is the general format. Liabilities, again, like accounts payable is a current liability. Your debt's a long-term liability unless it says it's the current piece of it. And then the three pieces of shareholders' equity, common stock, additional paid-in capital, which usually most firms have, but the question will tell you if it does or if it doesn't. And then retained earnings, which is the accumulated net income less all your dividends. And then shareholders, liabilities and shareholders' equity should equal the assets. So that's pretty straightforward. Little things like working capital. Let's see here. Working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. That's worth knowing. I'd also say that you need to know how to calculate like a change. If it says, what is the change from one year to the next? Well, you're going to start with the current year values and subtract the prior year values for each component and then, put it together. So like in the working capital example, if you wanted to know the change in total working capital from one year to the next, you would take your working, your current assets minus current liabilities at the end of this year, and then subtract the current assets minus current liabilities from last year, and that would give you the change, either positive or negative, in working capital. Like anything else where you're selling for X, if you have one piece of that, you can work backwards. So, like if you're given working capital, Think of it this way, like if we come down here, um, and we're given, let me see, let me pull up my draw thing. I'll take this off before I post it, but so say we're given working capital where it's, what current liability, current assets minus current liabilities. Okay. So say um, it doesn't give us one of those numbers, but it gives us the working capital number. We know that it's this minus this. So if it gives us current liabilities and it gives us the chain, or it gives us what the net working capital value is, like say current liabilities is 50 and the change, that's the delta sign for change, is 75, then what is the current assets? The current assets is X equals. So if we know it's 50, we know that that's a difference. We would just add them together. So 50 plus 75 is going to be what, 125. So we can work backwards and figure out the current assets, which is 125. Similarly, if we're given current assets and we're given the change, we could work down and get to it was equal to 50. Like if you're given two of the three parts, you can figure the other one. So let me see if I can take all that off. Okay. All right. So, you know, being able to calculate that kind of stuff is, uh, I just wanted to be able to do that. Um, then here I've got a basic income statement. And once again, the big thing with these is being able to calculate for X. Like if it gives you all the pieces except for like say cost of goods sold or depreciation or interest expense, like you can work your way backwards um, to figure out which piece is missing. And so that's the thing. That's why I want you to, have a good idea of what these look like. I want you to be able to remember sort of this basic format. That way, if you have a question where you've got to figure out like a missing piece, you can work your way backwards. So I think that that's an important thing to know. And it's good problem solving. So, but that's it. That's the content for chapter two. Knowing this stuff is probably the hardest part. Uh, but yeah, again, I think you can get through it. Um, I've not picked or I've not put in, real hard questions. There. I've tried to get ones that aren't deliberately tricky, or that don't have, deliberately tricky components that, you can typically get to them, with, from a pretty straightforward perspective. So I think that you guys should be pretty good with that. All right, let's go ahead down to chapter four. So chapter four, you could probably guess we're talking about time value of money. Um, you know, Understanding what happens when you change one input. So time rate, present value, future value, or not in this chapter, but the payment amounts later on. And then what happens to everything else? So if the time is longer, then what is the effect on the future value? Well, it gets bigger. If the rate is smaller, what happens to the present value? It gets smaller. Like knowing those little pieces. Um, Difference in simple interest and compound interest. Basically, simple interest is just calculate each period based on the remaining principal, and then compound is where you have you're calculating it based on both the principal and any previously accrued interest that hasn't been paid yet. So, the interest on the interest. Um, yeah, review the formula sheet, go over how to use the financial calculator. Knowing how to, this is huge, knowing how to identify the components uh, within the question. There are an awful lot of like word question types where it gives you a scenario and you need to be able to read through and pick out like, okay, this is the periods, this is the present value, this is the future value, this is the just whatever it happens to be. being able to pick those pieces out. Now, a couple things that you want to keep in mind is that it may not tell you exactly what the present value or future value is, but if you read the question, it might be understood that the value is zero. For instance, if you're repaying a loan and you're trying to figure out, what the present value of it is, well, think about it. You're repaying a loan, so at the end of the period, there's going to be zero left. Like you don't repay a loan and still have to leave $500 left. Like you repay the loan till it's zero. And so, even though it may not specifically say the future value is zero, if you just follow along with the question, like you'll recognize, oh, there's not going to be anything left. Or, like, say, if you are, uh, that's an example for present value zero. If you're looking for future value and you're going to make, a number of payments every year of a certain amount or whatever, well, at what's the present value? It may not say what the present value is. It just says starting at the end of year one, you're going to make this payment. Well, if you haven't made any payments up until that point, then the present value is zero. So typically, unless it gives you in the question specifically the present value or the future value, and you're solving for one of those, then the other one's going to be zero because either you're paying something off or you're starting with nothing. Like that zero is just understood that it's what it is. So you don't want to forget that. Um, Also, with questions where, like, if it asks you to manipulate something, but it doesn't give you a dollar amount, like it says, double or quadruple or do whatever, um, to a specific, uh, like whatever, how long to double your money or something, but it doesn't tell you what to start with. Well, just use the number one. I mean, honestly, it's that easy. If it just says, how long will it take you to quadruple your money using this rate, compounded once per year or whatever, then just plug in the number one as your payment or whatever. Um, and then whenever you put that piece in, now it can calculate because the rate is going to be the same whether you're putting in $1 or $100 million. The rates, the math still works. Same with the period. Doesn't matter how much you're putting in. If it's asking you to, double something, or if it's asking that kind of question where it's not giving you a dollar amount, um, you can still plug in a one or 100 million or whatever you want to, and it's still going to give you like the same time period. So that's just something else to keep in mind, that if it doesn't specifically give you the dollar amount, you can typically substitute $1 in there because again, rates and time periods and stuff are going to be the same no matter the dollar value. So keep that in mind. Let's see. And then, yeah, right here I mentioned that they might be with a zero. Don't forget that one of them has to be negative whenever you put it in. Okay, then chapter 5, the discounted cash flow model. So time value of money still applies, so you still need to know all that stuff. Now we have payment amounts whenever we're putting stuff into our calculators. Or it may be referred to as a C in a question if it's cash payment. But again, a lot of these questions, it's still like you're missing one component and it's asking you to find that specific component. So again, you're solving for X. Know the difference between annuities and a perpetuity. Ordinary annuity and annuity due. You need to know the difference in those, and you need to know how to change your calculator to an annuity due. Be able to change calculator to the annuity due function. And I'm looking at, oh geez, I dropped my calculator. So it's the doing clear So right above the payment key, you want to hit the second, and then right above the payment key, it's naturally set to end, but you can uh, let's see. Hold up. I want to make sure I tell you guys the right thing. Let me pull up the slides. I want to make sure I tell you guys the right thing. That would be bad if we didn't do it the right way. For some reason, it's slipped my mind. So let's just look it up real quick. I'll pull the slide over in just a second. Then it's our phone big. Here, that's payment period. There we go. All right, let's put this over here. So set the time value parameters. This is slide 17 in chapter 4. So it's your calculator is already set to end, but if we need to change it, um, you hit second and set. That's what it is. So if we hit uh, uh, second on your calculator and then uh, the payment button, which is the begin button, the BGN. All right, it comes up and it says the calculator itself will say end on it. Then you press the second key again and you hit the set button, which is set is right above the enter key, which is the second button from the left on the top row. And now it changes it to BGN. And then also at the top of your calculator, you can see that BGN shows up over like at the top on the right. And now if I do second set again, you can keep toggling back and forth between it by hitting second and then the set key. Let's go back over to Word file. Let's say change the period for only do want to do second BGN, second set. Toggle. So be sure to set it back to end when you're done. So yeah, you want to make sure you set it back to end. Set it back to end because most of your questions are going to be regular. So there, so that you got that in here you can study for now. And then yeah, they paid the last day versus the first day is ordinary versus annuity due. And then knowing the difference between the EAR and APR and how to calculate them. We covered that on Friday. So that's the last thing from chapter 5 that you want to know. Now, first, let me save this. Now, let me pull up the formula sheet. So I've actually tried to give you guys a lot of stuff here. So I put together this notation guide just where I've shown like how things are abbreviated down below. So if you don't know what something is, you can look it up. Here are the basic, present value, future value, how you do these different pieces. if you were doing it by hand. Okay. So that's for time value of money. I do it for annuities, perpetuities, interest rate conversions. That's the APR and EAR. So that's all like your formulas that you're doing stuff by hand. If I look at that, like those in and of themselves aren't terribly helpful. Um, but what I've done is I've gone through and I've also added some of the information from your calculator. And so you're going to have this for the exam. And even though you do have to remember how to use it, like I'm trying to give you some of the background, like some of the pieces of it. So here, this is what all the different pieces are, what they mean. Down here, um, things like remember that the sign conventions, present value, future value, one of them must be negative. A positive cash flow is an inflow, which is, cash coming into my hand. The negative is cash outflow, where it's leaving my hand. Um, Multiple cash flows. You can calculate them using the cash flow function. Um, you have to remember, though, that you have to hit the enter button and the down button, the down arrow, in each piece of the cash flow, like mode, whenever you're in it. And so I gave you the first few, like this is how it would show up. And it's also in your slides for chapter 5. But if you hit the cash flow button, the CF, which is what? It's the second row right beside the second button. Um, it pops up C00 is the cash flow time period. Zeros, C01 is the cash flow period 1. Then frequency 01 is the frequency of the period 1 cash flow. How many times? Is it 1? The default is 1. Whenever it pops up, it'll automatically be defaulted to 1. But if it's going to be more than that, then you can hit, 2, 3, 4, like whatever. Like if it says, you're going to pay $100 for the first 5 periods and $200 for the next 5 after that. Like you could do your F01 would be a 5. And then whenever you get to F02, that would be another 5 or 6 or whatever it tells you. Um, and remember, after each one, you press enter and then the down arrow after each one of these steps. And at the end, whenever you've entered all your cash stuff, you hit the net present value button, which is right beside the cash flow button, the CF button. Whenever you hit that, it'll pop up the I asking you what the interest rate you want to use is. Type in your interest rate, hit enter and the down button, and then hit compute. So it'll pop up MPV equals, and you hit the compute button, and it'll give you your answer. So, this you've got to remember how to do it, but that gives you at least sort of the steps. And then down here for EAR and APR, to enter the rate calculation, press the second plus the ICONV, which is the 2 button, like literally the number 2 button down at the bottom. That's the second function is ICONV. And then basically there's 3 pieces. Whenever you hit that button, it's going to give you the nominal, NOM, the effective, EFF, and the compounding periods per year, CFY. As long as you have 2 of them, you can compute the third. So if it gives you a nominal and it gives you the compounding periods, then you can put in those 2 and you can hit, go to EFF and press compute, and it will give you what the EFF, the effective rate is. You use the up and down arrows to move between them. So that's you've got to do the normal, like type in the nominal rate and hit the enter button. Well, you always have to hit enter with that stuff. But then you can use the up and down buttons to move back and forth through them. Just remember whenever you start over to do the second and clear, so you clear everything out. That way you don't have an old number stuck in there. So I think that this should help with the calculator a lot. I'm pretty confident that you guys should do pretty well on this. I will still be having office hours throughout the week. And you're always welcome to reach out to me to try and schedule additional office hours that I can work around my schedule that we can do that. You just got to get a hold of me by email, preferably. I would prefer you not to send messages through eCampus because I don't see those for a while usually. So email my main lhardway at mail.wvu.edu and we can set up a time to get together if need be. Otherwise, take the test at your convenience. Study for it until you're confident. Take it. Make sure you take it with enough time that you can get it done. Um, excuse me. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions beforehand. Don't what else? Don't forget to check your proctorio. That's a big one. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. Probably took a few minutes longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure you got a good walkthrough of what the expectations were going to be for the exam. Stop the sharing. Yeah. So I just, like I said, I want everyone to be successful. I also want, I want you to learn the material, but I want you to be successful with it also. So I'm trying to give you as many of the tools as I can uh, to make it that way for you. So I will get this stuff saved and put up on the campus. You'll see it all there. And that's it. Thanks. Good luck. And I will see you next week after the exam. So I guess the next week. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Stop recording. Yes.